Is oh, Boris is here. Good. Good. I was just making sure everybody's names are on this list. Cool. Go ahead. Keep talking. Those two are completely complementary. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Hey, Snowman Factory. Welcome to the stream. We're just getting started. Cool. I think we're all set. If you guys want to share tweets and things about it, maybe we'll get more people in the room too. It's twitch.tv/robotsradio. That's fine. I'm almost, you know, it probably auto posts whenever I go live. I can just post another thing on here. So many little moving parts once you add just like an extra component to this. Like if it's just us talking and chatting, you get a little bot in there, we record, everything goes, right? And then as soon as you start streaming it, it's like, oh, now we got to make sure people know. And yeah, it's just like so many other stuff, other things to do. Come on, thing. Here we go. Join us for Robots Roundtable Live. Twitch.tv/robotsradio. Okay, so you can share my post if you want. Look at my old horrendous username. Nice. Snowman switched over. Who's the dinosaur? Somebody's the dinosaur. I've got the, if you watch the stream, there's little characters walking around on the bottom. Oh, that's real white guar. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm, okay. I think we're good. I think we're ready to start. You guys feel good about this? Is your body ready? Too much information. Awesome. Thank you. Nah. Actually, I'm going to be right back in a moment. Yeah, you haven't had the sound working and then it couldn't work, so that was no fun. Okay, cool. So, let's Dave, do you mind starting first since you're the new guy? And then we'll go who wants to go second? Okay, Ian second, and then Ken usually likes to wrap up last. That seems to be tradition. And then so Boris and then Ken. Okay, cool. All right, we'll get this started. Ready? Hey everybody, welcome to the most recent episode. Welcome to this episode. Man, that's the best start ever. Let me start over again. Hey everybody, welcome to Robots Roundtable, the show where the hosts from the Robots Network get together to talk about all sorts of crazy, wacky, interesting things. And this week we've got like a full party of hosts, including our newest show. We have Dave Chaffins from the Cryptid Cast. Welcome, Dave. How's it going? Yeah, we put on these nice faces and then we're really nice at first. That's what we do. And everything we say ends with a little drop at the end. Oh, it's so nice to have you. Yeah. You guys are doing so great. Thanks for coming. And the fake smile where like if you just look at the mouth it looks like they're really happy, but if you only look at the eyes are saying I will murder you. Yeah. Yes. So how's it going, Dave? Oh no, they can't hear anyone. Oh, here, I'll update it. I think yep, it just needs to go to
your call is important to us. Thank you for holding.
Yes, here we go. That's funny. Thank you for holding. Yeah, there's a setting that has to, since I go to headphones, when I go to this, I have to switch to headphones. So they should be able to hear everybody now. Can you hear everybody? Somebody say something.
Hello.
No Man Factory, Real Bike Choir.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Yep, they got you now. Okay, cool.
Great.
All
Excellent.
right, back to the show. Thanks for letting us know, chat. So Dave, how's it going? Welcome to the show. How are things with the new show and changing up? If actually, you know what I want to do is I want to make sure people know who you are, because a lot of people know you from your previous show. So tell us a little bit about that.
I can give my elevator pitch, I suppose. So my name's Dave. I've done for a year. It's been, I guess, a little over a year. I did a podcast called Vault Boys WV. Out of the excitement that we had when we first learned that Fallout 76 was based in West Virginia, we ended up getting together because we both live in West Virginia, and I have a minor in Appalachian Studies from a university, which was probably more expensive, and this is the only thing that I use it on, so it seems kind of weird. But
money well spent.
Yes. We ended up going through, and we were like, okay, let's go through and talk about the backgrounds of these places. And for a while, we just kind of ran off trailers for the game. We hadn't played the game. So we started in July and it didn't come out to November. So we just watched that documentary that they did and a few of the trailers and picked out certain things that we saw and things that could be in the game. And then just continued when the game was released. We ended up, I guess, we played the game, and I still play the game and like it and have fun. And I just finished my bloodied build, and I'm pretty excited about that. But we ended up kind of getting, not necessarily burnt out, but there just became a point where we covered everything. Like, we felt like we were kind of done. Like, we had covered everything that is represented in the game, and, maybe not to the level of depth that you would get in a university degree program. But from our perspective, it seemed like that we were kind of reaching an end. So we had slowly made a transition, and kind of we're talking about different cryptids. And everybody seemed to really like the cryptids and what we're talking about. And cryptids are like things like Mothman or Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster. Or I actually have this is the kind of books that I have. I have I guess a dictionary. I don't know if it's a dictionary, more like an encyclopedia of cryptids that goes from like an alphabetical order of all the cryptids ever.
Wow. Do you know how many there are?
I mean, it's impossible to chart all the cryptids because literally I could be like, I just saw a bat outside of my window that spoke in Spanish and wore a top hat, and that's a cryptid.
I bet we could give it a name. Everybody right now, come up with a good name for that bat.
Boswell?
Bernard. I like that we both went with bees.
I was just thinking that we both thought with bees.
I think it needs to start with like
too. Butler names.
I think it needs to start with like El Paco.
El, El Paco.
The El Paco. What is the El Paco? It is the bat that speaks in Spanish.
The alpaca. That's good.
Yes. Yes.
So we decided we were doing this transition. We were like, okay, well, what do we like to do? What do we enjoy podcasting about? What are we trying to do? We still enjoy doing the podcasts and doing the different stuff. We just weren't necessarily like, we were kind of essentially just done with Fallout. Like we had covered everything we wanted to. So we got together and we were like, okay, well, everybody likes cryptids. So why don't we just build a platform for that? And so we came up with the idea for the Cryptid Cast, but that was back in May, I guess. We came up with that. So now it's finally, everything has pieced together and has come together, and we're doing stuff. So essentially what the Crypticast is each week we go through and we pull out what we call pop culture creature. So things like the Demogorgon or Slenderman or Dementors or you could even call the Mothman in Fallout 76. We're going through and we're breaking down those creatures because most of the time when you're talking about those kinds of things, we're talking about, I guess there's stories connected to them. There's like some real life evidence within them that they're all kind of inspired by these old stories or myths or
yeah, I'm sure there's like a time where they started to show up in pop culture. The stories started to get shared. Some sort of original, like this person on this date was the first one who mentioned this thing, and that's probably this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more accessible way of talking, because if we just said, okay, let's talk about the Mothman, and we just start going to town on my Mothman, which is not really any different from how we do now, but it would be accessible for people. So we were like, okay, well, let's start working through. Let's make a list and let's just start working through each creature. And so we have like our big subject of the week is one creature. So our first episode will be the Demogorgon, just because it's relevant. Everybody watched Stranger Things. We are big Stranger Things fans.
And that comes out on this Wednesday?
Wednesday, yes. Wednesday.
Everywhere. Yeah. Snowman.
And if
Snowman in chat is asking if it's on Spotify. So yeah.
Yeah, it's on Spotify. The name should be live. The artwork is still refreshing because it takes a little bit of time for that to hit all the different services. But so that's coming out on Wednesday. First episode is the Demogorgon. We also do we pull in some community stories. This week's community story is really great. It's about installing crossing signs for cryptid up in I guess New England. And then I bring a headline from current cryptid news, which you'd be surprised. There's a lot of different stuff.
That's great. That sounds awesome. I can't wait.
Is Weekly World News even still around anymore? I used to love those when I was a kid.
No,
I'm pretty sure it's not.
No, I don't. I think that the company that made it stopped because, well, maybe they revived it. I know that they stopped because I did research for Bat Boy, which is the Lewisburg cave creature. I know that all the people that originally worked on it stopped, and they killed it, I think, in 2014. But maybe I remember they brought it back, but it's like, same name, different crew.
Cool. Well, thanks for the introduction. I'm sure all of us will be listening to that Wednesday when it comes out. And yes. I just wanted to note before we move on to everybody else that Snowman Factory came up with the best name for the bat cryptid you just invented, the El Batman.
The El Batman. Mm-hmm. Well, I did have a small topic to talk about today, just because that was one of the things. I wanted to talk to you all about a Twitter profile called Lesser Known Cryptids. I'll post it in the chat. It's at Lesser Cryptids. It is a Twitter page in which this user, which doesn't have very many followers, this user makes lesser known cryptids. And so there are different pictures of, let's see, there's like a horse with legs, and they're like, oh, look at this horse with legs. Or there's a big sign with a peach in a Walmart that says, we're made for peach other. And it says peach other in big letters. And so they're like, today's lesser known cryptid is the peach other.
I'm looking right now. Today's lesser known cryptid as Dory, the girl nobody loved. It looks like an old Dime Star novel.
Yes.
You know what? The cat with like the really stretchy neck thing. I did see that online somewhere. And the horse with legs, no joke, is a horse head with a human, like from the waist down body. no arms, just naked man legs underneath a horse head.
Yes. So I feel like that is fitting satire if you are ready to satire on us, because literally a sleeping skeleton could be a cryptid.
This chicken
At this
frog
point.
stand thing looks crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you guys didn't get that, if you're listening, twitter.com/lessercryptids, go check that
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
Oh man.
They only have like 62 followers, so
Oh my goodness.
We need to blow this up. We need to. Okay, so
mean,
everybody
this
who
is
listens
like-
to this needs to go
the
follow
Chinese
right now.
Big Bird is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen.
All right, I'm gonna follow on like all 5 of my accounts right now.
yeah.
Everyone else, we need to get this up to at least 100. Come on.
Yeah. I'll be their manager. If they get big, I volunteer to distribute. I'll be their like content manager. Be like, you guys are doing great work. Let's get you some deals, man. Let's
Yeah, look at onion cat. Look at all those onions.
It's wild.
Oh, they're garlic.
So
That's garlic.
That was my topic. for
Yeah.
today.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Let's get to introducing everybody else so everybody knows all the other voices. We've got with us also this week Ian from Under the Shroud, who has been on the show the last few weeks. I think it's been this is your 3rd time now.
This is my 3rd time.
You were like the new guy. Now you're the old pro.
It's weird that you say that because I was starting to feel that way. Signing on, I was like, well, I just got to set up the mic and get on and talk about your stuff. There was something about it that felt very veteran status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got a little taller too, I think.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
My lifts really do make all the difference in audio.
And then we also have Boris from the Destiny Show podcast. Welcome, Boris.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's great to be back.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer the new guy.
Yeah, you're no longer the new guy either, and you're not having any audio issues this week, which is awesome. So
That was a trip last time. Was it 2 weeks ago?
It was, yes. And, the funny thing about it is that the culprit was literally one button. It was one button.
Did you ruin that button? Did you destroy its life? Did you tell it it's not allowed to read books anymore? Because that button, it needs to be punished.
I thought about punishing the button, but I figured I may need it at some point in the future, so it might come back and bite me, so...
So you just gave it like a stern warning and then told it, I still love you, though. I still love you, button.
It's like shaming
Coming
your
soon.
dog,
Coming soon to the Robots Radio Network, punishing the button.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
And that other voice you hear is Ken from Chad, a Fallout 76 story. Welcome back, Ken.
How do?
Yeah, talk about old pros. You're like one of the OG crew at this point.
I was here from the beginning.
I made it back in 1947 during the deep storms of this rain and the... Okay, Grandpa, thank you.
84 years.
84 years. All right, now that we're all done following lesser-known cryptids on Twitter, and I'm serious about this, listeners. If you were listening in a car, pull over right now, open up your Twitter app, and go to lesser known cryptids and follow them. We need to make
You
this.
tweeted them.
Yes.
If you find a lesser known cryptid, like you're looking at like the Charmin Ultra Bear, and you're like, man, when do we ever see him?
Yeah. I had that same thought. The Charmin commercial came on the other day, and I was like, this is super weird. Bears don't wipe their butts. These
My
bears
high
are
school
different.
Bus driver is a lesser known cryptid. I've got a picture I'm going to tweet.
That's probably a good one. So, all right, let's move on with who was up next? Ian? What you bringing?
Yeah.
What you bringing this week?
I am bringing. So I was thinking a lot this week about casting in audio drama and directing, and then writing to those actors, because it's sort of all one big. Obviously, it's an all-inclusive project. Those of us who work in no money at all audio drama know that pulling in actors can be kind of a tricky thing. A lot of the folks that I cast are folks that hang out at the coffee shop that I work at for my day job. And I just, I'll be typing away, and then I'll overhear a conversation with somebody I already know well and think, they fit into this spot, and just sort of call them over.
That's crazy. You know what? Your show, you do such a good job with the voice acting. You and Chad are the two shows on our network where you have voice acting and characters and those kinds of things. And it's rare that I hear any of the actors on those shows and I'm like, that's an amateur. They don't know what they're doing. It's like, well, man, how did they get that guy? Because he's doing really well or she's doing really well. And You know, they must. How do you pay for that? But you're just finding really good talent in a coffee shop.
Pretty much. Well, a lot of it has to do with the writing, to be honest. And I don't say that to take away from what they're doing. What I mean is that you have to kind of write towards them. So when I'm drafting out episodes, a lot of times, like a great example is a fan favorite, True Believers, and the character of Miss Muriel, who is voiced by my dear friend and coworker Dana McKnight. I had a sense where I wanted to go with this character. I wanted her to be a true believer, a good devout Christian. I wanted her to be a little goofy, and then I planned this episode around that. And then when I started talking to Dana about the character and showed her the script, it became clear what direction I could take the character in that would be comfortable for her. And then I amplified it really hard. I found that it's easier for folks without necessarily an acting background or haven't been doing it for a while, to play something that's broader, that's a little more cartoonish. And then the key is giving them something that's large to play, that they just need to get comfortable. And then giving them a setting where they feel like they can express themselves to this big extreme. We do all of our recording in my apartment, which is covered in styrofoam for that reason, most of which has been painted to look like a dungeon cell.
Just gets you right in the mood.
I'll post a picture of it on Twitter later just to give a sense for the listeners. But I mean, it paints a mood, but it also was like we needed to have something on the walls that was incredibly inexpensive and dealt with the sound issues. And we're just having styrofoam, so we were like, let's make this look kind of cool. So anyway, we record at my apartment. I get up some water, they sit down on the couch, and we just relax and hang out. And generally speaking, we start recording scenes, and the early scenes take a lot of fine tuning. We do line by line recordings, and I'll take them in a direction, take them in another direction. And then we'll start to hit our groove about the second or third scene that an actor is working on. And then frequently we'll go back and do those early scenes again because they found the character. They know where they're going now. They know what they're building towards in a different way. Which is, just a lot of fun to do. But the other aspect of it that I've really enjoyed is when I learn what an actor can do and what they're comfortable with, and then I can write to that specifically from the get-go. A great example of this in our show is the character of Gibbons. Backing up a little bit, for those of you who don't know, are tall tales from an extra-natural cab stand lost in Baltimore's supernatural underbelly. It's a fairly dark and urban take on urban fantasy. And Gibbons plays the role of the dispatcher and the main character's boss. And he's the other primary character in the show. He usually doesn't feature, actually until our last episode, he doesn't feature hugely in the episodes.
But he shows up.
Check-in point.
Yeah.
He shows up.
He shows up
pretty much every episode.
Yeah. It seems like that.
And in writing for him, sorry, I had to take a sip of water. In writing for him, it took me a second to sort of find his groove with the character and to figure out where he liked to be tough and where his pauses were, what sort of lengths of sentences worked best for which deliveries. It was really a delight to work with him. And now that I've got that, it took me a while, and I was able to write an episode that dealt with him exclusively, where I could really show him off in the proper light. The last episode that came out, The Warrens, again, features him in a big way. He gets out of the cab stand and comes onto the street and works with the main character, Corin. I don't think I could have really done that justice until I'd worked with him for several months on the episodes. I think that's why there's a lot more love and attention in that episode, because they are so much on the two characters are so much on the same page. Not that the other episodes don't work really well, just that one has a specific fun to it because these characters know each other, because I've been able to write them as companions.
Yeah, I just listened to that episode, and it does feel like they are. The premise in the story is that they go way back, but there are things that the main character doesn't necessarily know about Gibbons. And there's a familiarity and camaraderie and competition, you know, like that. They're stuck together, but they know each other. They can trust each other, but they don't really like each other, you know, like, and it comes through pretty good in the way that they talk. It's one of those things that feels very natural.
Yeah, and that was important to me. One of I have a couple of like favorite relationships in fiction, and one of those is the boss and employee that really mostly hate each other. But when you work with somebody for a long time, and particularly when there's dire circumstances, I mean, it's a noir drama, so death is constantly a factor. And you start to just know how each other work and depend on each other, and
right.
Even if there is little love lost, there's still something vital and important there. And it was really a pleasure to work with everybody on that. It also, incidentally, was one of the episodes where my sound guy, Ed Kohler, he started to really feel the drama in the edits and the way that he pieced together the timing, which doesn't sound like it would be a huge art form. It really is. Oh, and yeah, it's a trip. How those the pauses between, or how you overlap, and where you stick in the sound effects, how that can play in. And it was very evident from this last episode that Ed Kohler, who has been ticking up the whole time and just getting better, how he really came into his own. I'm going to sort of address all this issue from another angle. We're also re-recording our first 3 episodes right now for re-release, because we've learned so much and we're so much better with the show. And that's one of the things that's been really interesting with the writing and the casting. Unfortunately, we had to recast the role of McTeer, nationalist and villain early on in the show. And we're very sad to lose Jean Fontenot, but we're very happy to get the new guy, Dan Ferry, on board. And it was really fascinating working with a new guy doing an old character. And McTeer has become much more of a character in the writing of the show. I now know what he's up to about 20 episodes out. And bringing in a new guy and watching his interpretations of a lot of the same lines and him taking it in his own direction was just fascinating. And I started to realize new things about the character, that McTeer, again, is a Titan nationalist, so he's a villain, about as villainous as it gets, but he's not necessarily an older guy. When I originally wrote him, I had this sort of like James Spader meets Boyd Crowder, like Blacklist Justified thing going on. And when I had a young guy in front of me in the room, he got younger, no less villainous, but a little fresher about the world, and working with him to sort of, change some lines here or there to fit that. And knowing that down the line where I can use those aspects of his personality a little better, it was a really interesting and beautiful experience.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to working with him more.
That sounds fascinating, because it seems like such a large amount of work, and it seems like the kind of thing that you can only really get to working with actors in a situation like that if they're all paid to be there, or if you're all just enjoying it so much that it's coming from this like place of authenticity.
That is an astounding thing I've realized about the city of Austin in general. And it is not by any means across the board, but there is in this city this sense that if you are approaching an artistic endeavor with genuine ambition, but also genuine joy, and the approach to what you're doing, people want to be there for it. And it's by no means exclusive to Austin. That exists in little pockets all over the place. But yeah, I don't have any money. And the actors that come in so frequently come so excited because they just want to, they want to make something cool happen. They want to be a part of this little world that I'm figuring out. And oftentimes I give them beer. That helps.
Well, yeah, you just pay them in beer. Yeah, that's how you get people to help you move, right? Beer and pizza.
Yeah, particularly, I find that vodka before you lift the first box really gets everything into the truck, just, not necessarily in one piece.
Or to the destination. So, any of you guys have any other questions about that? I'm curious if Ken, if you found anything similar in working with your voice actors.
It's 100% similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we won't go back and redo it. Partly because the show has evolved so much from just me and static journal style stories into something that's a lot more dynamic. But with our last episode, I had that same feeling that you did when everything just starts feeling more authentic and more on par with the kind of show that you had in your head, as far as just the timing of everything and the comedy and the actors being so authentic. And even as we go on, the actors becoming more in character, really starting to feel the character and understand their motivations and add stuff in that I didn't even think of. And even, like you said, playing to their strengths. I think I just had the great luck of finding some really talented people. Only one of us, and that's Alex, who voices Chad, is an actual actor. The rest of us are just really enthusiastic about Fallout or always wanted to get into podcasting or voice acting. But as I'm learning them, I'm writing things that play to their strengths. An example of that is one of the people, Jessica, on our team is a really amazing ukulele player. So in the 4th of July special, she had she did the Oscar Mayer Wiener song just before
That was her?
hot dog. Yeah, just before the hot dog
That's
eating
great.
contest, and I loved it so much. In the summer special, which we're working on now, I wrote another scene where she's just this incredibly annoying, overzealous camp counselor who just takes out the ukulele and goes into everyone's really painful favorite song, Kumbaya.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So there's this whole duet, and everybody starts leaving the firing just to get away from it. But she does such a great job with it. I wrote to her strength there.
Cool.
It's
Cool.
such a fun thing to watch develop.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things that I've been getting now that they're through Robots Radio. Thank you, Robots Radio, and thank you, Tom. Now that I have more an outlet to directly talk with fans, there's this wonderful thing that happens where when they ask questions about the universe, they're asking not about what you're coming up with, but they're asking about how a reality functions. And when the actors get more involved, they also do this, where they're deeply invested in what's going on. So they need to there's something in the tenor of their voice that doesn't speak to fiction; it speaks to a new kind of truth, and in their curiosity, that's just really rewarding and touches me.
Yeah, that's really cool. This is the kind of stuff that you don't really get into until you dive deep enough into something to realize that it's even there. These life experiences that take a certain amount of experience actually doing a thing before you realize that it is a thing. And there are definitely a few things in my life that I've done long enough to get to this place where it's like that whole, a lot of people have assumptions about what it would be like to do that. But when it really comes down to it, it's like you put on your glasses and you go, well, actually, this thing happens if you do this long enough. And this thing is the next thing you're going to experience. And that only comes with experience.
Which is fascinating because, like, I read books or, some of my friends who've worked in television or who work in movies, and I ask them about these issues. And frequently from people with very similar levels of experience, I will get completely opposing answers about how you deal with a problem. That's not sensitive. Just in terms of rewriting, like I've heard people who say that, like, well, you just need to tailor each word and get it just right. Or I've heard people that in terms of editing, I'm sorry, let me be more clear. In terms of editing, taking the script as it is and then just tweaking here and tweaking there until it's just right. And then a long time ago, I got a piece of advice from a professor who said, nope, it's better to just take the pages that you have written and rewrite them from scratch, which is usually my method. and you don't really know which is yours until you try it out. Anybody who's listening right now who's considering taking on some sort of broad endeavor, the biggest piece of advice I can give, and I think this is coming off of what Tom said, is just to go ahead and start building it, because you don't know what you're building until you have it in front of you. And you don't know how to make it better until it's happening right there. And if fine, that's great. Keep moving and keep making another thing. Because thinking about it and theorizing and even plotting and planning really doesn't hold a candle against an actual aggressive approach to creativity and productivity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Well, anything else you want to add about that before you move on?
Oh, just I want to reiterate my gratitude to Robots Radio, because this network has really been extremely helpful in putting me in touch with fans, and thank you to those fans, and you guys are awesome. But I'll shut up now.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I think that's part of the fun of pulling all of you guys together, is that each of your shows is great, and so much of the time you just don't get. It's so hard to get your shows in front of people, but I end up finding your shows, or you find me and I listen to your shows, and I'm like, man, if this is in front of the right audience, people are going to love this, you just got to get it out there.
I have one last question for you, Ian. Do you feel the challenge or the ever constant need to top yourself with the next episode than the previous one?
I'm starting to. It's funny you say that, because that actually the episode that I was recording yesterday. I had a big recording day yesterday. I recorded, I think, 4 episodes. But yeah, the episode I was working on yesterday was the first one in a while where I was like, oh, this isn't quite better than the last one. And they all have tended to be. And that was sort of the first moment of that. In terms of writing them, at this point, and I know that this does have a critical mass or whatever, but at this point, build the more toys I have to play with, and it's just going to get better kind of on its own. So it's fairly easy to continue to progress. But yeah, no, I'm aware. I also up until very recently, there wasn't the kind of fan base where I was particularly worried about disappointing people. Now there are people who are reaching out, who are super enthusiastic, and I feel more of a welcome and encouraging pressure delivering what they need and what they want. So not yet, but that is coming. And frankly, I'm trying to get as many episodes drafted before that mind-numbing pressure kicks in.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you very much for that question, though.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things that's kind of unavoidable at some point, if you care about your product,
That's kind of where I'm at now, partly because the summer special ended up becoming kind of a monstrosity as far as the length of it, because it's going to be our longest episode ever. So
what's the length again?
It's going to be almost feature length, so it should be. I think we clocked it in at 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. But after that, I want to go back to simpler stories. Partly because it's torturous to edit together and get it done fairly quickly.
Yeah, I don't know how you do the directing, the writing, and the editing. That's the one piece of the puzzle that I've said his name out loud a couple of times, very much on purpose, because I'm super grateful to him. But my sound guy, Ed Kohler, I would not be able to do this without him, because that particular variety of maneuver make me want to blow my brains out. So kudos to you for doing the whole thing.
I'm looking for that for next season. If there's anybody out there, please, for the love of God, save me.
Yeah.
You could share small proceeds of the things that the money you make on the show. Hey, you get like $2 a year to help out.
There you go, $2 and a smile and a sticker.
It's tricky, man. Sound traditionally from this I know from my little amount of work in film. Sound guys are it's one of the career paths where you really can't fudge it. The couple of times I've been trying to put together short films, the biggest piece of advice that I found to be applicable across the board is that you can probably get your friend to handle the camera. And you could probably, sort of futz art direction and, rent what you can afford or get your hands on for lighting. But if you want it to be worth showing at a film festival, you probably need to pay him exactly what he asks for.
There's a reason professionals make the money that they do to do the things they do. That experience, it's not, you're not just paying for the time it takes for them to work on your project. You're paying them for the years and years of experience and study and practice that went behind every decision they make when they spend that few hours to work on your project. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand that's why they're worth the money.
Tom and I live this plane as consultants.
Yes. Yeah.
What do we have to justify our fees?
Yeah, like, what? This only takes you an hour. And it's like, yeah, but you're not just getting an hour worth of anybody's time, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. We've got Boris. I know you have something that you wanted to bring this week.
Yeah, so there was a interesting announcement that happened just a few days ago in the video game space, and there was an article written by Polygon, and the headline is that Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony to require loot box odd disclosure. Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, EA, Ubisoft, Wizard of the Coast, and other publishers will also comply. So it's a pretty big change in how we think about loot boxes in video games, and it's a pretty big shift in the requirements that game developers and game publishers now have with how loot boxes are handled. So
yeah, and we're talking odds here. We're talking odds of getting a specific item out of a box.
Yes.
Right.
So anything that requires any kind of a chance, there needs to be full disclosure now to the general public.
Man, that'll be interesting. I'm sure there's going to be articles that are like, well, which game has the absolute worst chances of getting a thing out of a box? And it's going to be interesting to see which ones stay the same and which ones change and get updated in order to make themselves not look as bad.
Let's roll out a hotfix immediately.
Yeah, right. Like, okay, before we publish this, let's double the odds for all the things. And then all of a sudden the audience is like, I get more stuff now from these loot boxes. That's weird.
Well, and I know you have also games that are considered virtual card games, like Magic the Gathering, for example.
Mm-hmm. Hearthstone, and Elder Scrolls Legends.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how these games will be affected by this change and how they will adapt to the new model.
Yeah. What do you think, Boris, what do you think is going to happen with that? Do you think there will be pushback, or do you think this is one of those things where it's like all these publishers, or not publishers, but all these platforms are getting behind it. So there's really going to, even if you're Fortnite, can you push back on something like this? Because your audience is already part of that platform. It's not like you're going to be like, well, we just won't be on Xbox anymore. Like it seems kind of like inevitable that they're just going to have to go with it.
I think this is an industry-wide change that we're starting to see, because there were legislative things that came into news pretty recently in the state of New York, at least, where these companies are being put under investigation for illegal practices, and it's going to be harder for them to sell these video games, especially with the bad publicity and press that video games are getting. I don't know if you guys had heard, but Walmart actually pledged to no longer allow any violent games in their store to be sold. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because so we should all talk about this.
It's almost like a wild west out there in the video game industry. and how everything is starting to kind of come into play. But I think these companies will be required to make a change, just based on not only consumer outcry, but also with how government is starting to crack down and handle these kind of things. And there are many industries that are pushing now in support of better legislation, like Sony and Microsoft and the other major publishers.
Yeah, so I have two different thoughts about this. One, I think transparency for things like loot boxes is probably a good thing because it encourages competition between the different games to have better odds than other games so that you know exactly what you're getting when you decide to shell out $10 for a pack of loot boxes or whatever. You know what your odds are. That's more fair. I think that's probably good in the end. But the whole Walmart games causing violence thing, you can clearly tell that this is very bottom of the line, money focused Walmart kind of decision, because they know that they have such a large percentage of their shoppers come from these more conservative leaning, if President Trump says it, they're going to believe it kinds of places, and they have to somehow be in line with that.
It also is kind of a stupid historical trend that we've never really learned from, or we do, and then we come back around to it anyway. There has always been literature or music or games or groups that are demonized for society's ills.
Right.
Violent video games. I've driven on the sidewalk in video games and beaten up prostitutes. But that doesn't mean that I go out and do that in reality.
Right.
I would argue that there's a lot more psychological going on in someone's head who does something as horrifying as what happened. And it was not caused by a video game. The damage was there, whether it's parents who were just nightmare that shaped this person's development, or a bad school situation, or constant bullying, or whatever it is. It had nothing to do with what they did in their spare time. It had to do with the reality in which they were living.
Right. And I think that's something that a lot of us just inherently understand, because we've been fighting this battle since the 90s. Forever. Yeah. And in the 90s, when the average age of a gamer was like 16 years old or something like that, then it was a lot easier for politicians to say, well, this must be the reason, because 16-year-olds don't have a voice in elections and they're not adults, so nobody's going to really take their opinion seriously. But now that the average age of a video gamer is something like over 40, right. and the vast majority of the population plays some sort of game, whether that's on your phone or on an Xbox or your computer or whatever. It just becomes more and more ridiculous, and it just shows how out of touch that part of society is. I had to kind of change this a little bit. I had a conversation with a coworker just 2 days ago, and it was a Friday, and it was kind of the end of the day. Everyone's just kind of hanging out, getting ready to go, and I was wearing a video game shirt. I was wearing a Fallout shirt with the big robot guy.
Liberty Prime.
Liberty Prime on it, and it says democracy is a whatever. I don't remember all the words. Anyway, the point is, she looked at non-negotiable, and she looks at my shirt and she goes, "Is that a video game thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a video game thing." And she's like, "All right." And I was like, "What is that?" And she's like, "I don't know. I mean," and somehow I guess she was thinking about going home and things she was going to do over the weekend, and her boyfriend who she lives with, and she was like, "If my boyfriend played video games, I don't know that I'd be down for that." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And she was like, "I was like, he's into other things, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, like motocross and all." And I was like, "Okay, well, what do you do in your spare time? What does he do in his spare time?" And she's like, "Yeah, but I don't ever want to be like, well, come on over and help me clean the dishes." And he's going to be like, "Sorry, I got to kill these bad guys." I was like, don't you ever tell him, "Hey, I've just got 5 more minutes of watching The Bachelor, then I'll come talk to you." It's the same exact thing. You're going to nerd out about something. And on top of it, whether you're watching TV shows or doing motocross or playing a video game, it's not going to affect, the way you interact with the world around you when it comes to things like violence. it just kind of bring it back around. It just all of
too
that
often
stuff.
We allow ourselves to be controlled by that which we do not understand or take the time to understand. The average politician is an old fart who doesn't understand how the internet works, much less what video games really are all about. Hence,
Right.
They end up shaping policy based on things that they don't really understand anyway.
But they do understand that humans are most motivated by the things they fear and the things they hope.
Well, that's how they get elected.
Right. That is, and we constantly make decisions based around the things we fear the most and the things that we hope for the most. And the reality is always somewhere between those two things. And those two
Sue
ends
Jones is coming for your
almost
kids.
never happen. And if we as humans can just get to this idea of, okay, the first thing that pops in your head is 99.9% not going to happen. So pick something else, then we could actually make better decisions. I don't know. That's my little diatribe for the week.
When I was in college, I back in the olden years when I probably smoked a little too much weed, I followed some transcendental meditation, Buddhist practice, whatever. And I remember pulling up an article where a lot of them are like, feel your emotions, but don't let your emotions control you. That's kind of one of the, I guess, a simplified way of talking about just controlling your thoughts and right thought, right action, all that stuff. And there was a study I read that was interesting that was talking about how I think some monks ended up like playing video games during the times that they felt anger. And it seemed like that, I guess, a particular offset of that was using that as a way to not like, it's not pro-violence particularly, but it's more or less like taking an aggressive tendency and putting it into something that is entirely trivial that doesn't hurt anybody.
Right.
So I think that there's more of a case
diffusing
today's terms to say, okay, well, it's not, video games are not pro-violence and make you want to go, do something. Maybe it's like pro-ADHD at best, but from that standpoint, being able to take those emotions and just funnel those into the game so you're not affecting the real world around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an outlet. It's just like any other form of entertainment. It's a way to cool off, a way to relax, a way to get those things out so that they don't affect the real things in your life.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Boris, did you have any other thoughts on this that you wanted to share? I know this has gone from loot boxes to violence in games, but it's kind of the way this show goes.
I'm glad you brought up that topic, though.
I completely agree that violence in video games is, or I should say, violence isn't the result of people playing video games, and I think it's a very dangerous territory to try to just put blame on one form of medium, because there are a lot of game developers and a whole industry that works very hard every day to produce immersive content that we can all enjoy. And part of that are video games, and we've had violence in movies for the longest time. And I think that it's something that I hope that Walmart does reconsider in terms of their policies, and I definitely wouldn't necessarily support that decision.
Yeah. It's a shame that we can't actually address the real problem, and that we just keep on getting pointed at these other things. It's like, oh, look at that shiny object over there. It's like, well, let's talk about the real issue. Maybe we could actually move forward if we stay on topic, but
it's going to take generations.
Yeah.
Older politicians who were born into a different time period to fade out, to be replaced by hopefully better people.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Robots Thoughts once. The idea that like humans change over time is probably less likely than the fact that society changes because generations die off.
Right.
That's the only real path of progress, is that individual generations just have to go away so that everyone else can then move forward with the things that they know to be true. And that's going to happen to us. All of us are going to be old cranky dudes at some point who are like, when I was young, like we can't say that that's not going to happen. We can try to keep it from happening. We try to stay up on things, but at some point we're going to feel like the people younger than us are steering things the wrong direction. But I don't know, maybe we can keep a level head.
There's a thing that's happened societally over the last, over gradually, but more and more effectively, I guess, over time, or with more and more strength, where ageism becomes more and more of an issue. And that's where that really springs up from, is that if you don't speak regularly with 17-year-olds and 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 70-year-olds, if there's not open communication between the different age ranges, then you're not going to get a grasp of where they're coming from, and you're going to lose track in a different kind of way. And I bring it up because I'm very, very grateful that the coffee shop that I work at has put me in touch with a bunch of younger kids. Like, there's a bunch of college students that go there. I'm in my 30s. But there's also a bunch of kids who are like 19, 20 through maybe 25, 27. And then there's a bunch of old farts, many of whom are recovering addicts of one variety or another, or just folks who don't like going to the bar. So this is where they come to socialize. And I frequently will look around and sort of just discover that I'm in a conversation with a high schooler, a college student, myself, and a 60-year-old guy and a 50-year-old guy. And, everybody's got different career paths and everybody's got different interests. And if you don't find yourself communications, then you're gonna lose. I'm very hopeful that I'll be able to maintain some level of contact into my old age, so that if I find myself thinking these kids and their damn rock music, I can look around and go, well, that's a kid right there, and it's his goddamn rock music, and I really enjoy him, and I know kind of where he's coming from. So I'm probably, can just shut my old face up and deal with it and move forward. At the same time, he can look at me and I'm like, fucking Modest Mouse. They,
Yeah, we all float, old man. We all float.
Yeah. He could, instead of just poo-pooing it because noise music is the only thing that exists anymore, he can see the value of it because he sees the look on my face when I put it on the jukebox.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's all about staying in touch and staying connected to other humans who might just have different, just like that's how you counter racism, is you actually talk to people who are different than you, who grew up in different places, who look different, who have different cultures, and you come to realize that you have more in common than you have different. I had this very interesting experience before I moved to Austin of living in a town of population 400 up in the Colorado mountains. There's a lot that was interesting about that town, but very briefly, it was the first time I'd lived in a red community, so to speak. And what was fascinating was that many, many, many of these profoundly conservative people, none of them were rude or mean to anybody who I ever saw, unless it was a friend that they were giving shit to. But they had this distinct us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. And us was the people who lived in the town, or towns that were very similar, or something that was like identifiably similar to what they were. And it wasn't rare because black folks occasionally moved to the town. I'll be honest, there weren't a lot of black folks in that town. But whenever the black folks that lived there or, came and stayed there for a little bit, because there's a lot of transient folks coming through there, they were all pals. Like, everybody was friends. Everybody was wonderful to each other. They give you the shirt off your back. Very literally, I saw more generosity in that town than anywhere else I've ever lived. But that was largely like an accessible emotion, I think, or an accessible mindset, because there were enemies. They just didn't really know who they were because they were everybody who lived outside of this caldera. It's just interesting how that forms, because I think it's very easy to sort of pigeonhole people who live off in the country and have their backwards ways, but it's oftentimes because they are isolated, and within that isolation, they find a lot of comfort. Right.
Anyway.
Right. It's one of those plays into the fears things, there's somebody out there, some boogeyman out there is trying to take away my freedoms or the things that I love, the things that I think are important, my beliefs, any of those things. And so we need to protect against them. Well, who are they? Well, they're these people. Well, but I'm friends with some of those people, but not those people that are in my community, those people who are over there.
Frequently, I would end up in conversations with friends who are profoundly Republican, and I am deeply liberal. And at the end of the conversation, there would be sort of this like tap on the shoulder on both sides where we'd look at the other one and go like, oh, you're actually not a Republican. You just think you are. Or what they would say, I wouldn't say something like that out loud because it's very presumptuous. But I did have a couple buddies who would tap me on the shoulder and say, you're not actually a Democrat. You just think you are. And what I would think is like, no, we just like largely lot of really important things, and fear mongering gets in the way of that. And fear mongering does not really stand up to honest, friendly conversation. It stands up to aggression. It stands up to name calling very easily. But if you just have a good chat with somebody and trust them, then fear dissipates very quickly.
Yeah. That's all it takes is just having conversations, real conversations with people. Okay, let's move on. I know, Ken, you had something you wanted to bring to the table.
I do, yes. Summer camp horror stories.
Summer camp horror stories.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was looking forward to this.
So, in the summer special that we're going to be dropping on Labor Day, the episode that we're working on now, it got me thinking. It's a parody of the Pioneer Scouts quests. So there's a lot of jokes about doing these menial tasks just to get a goddamn backpack in the script. So there's kind of an inside joke there, and then grinding for patches and everything. But mixed up into all of this are some subplots about lost treasure and this very Scooby-Doo-esque search for that. And then you've got the Sickle Man of Crystal Lake. So it's kind of a nod to every 80s trope, teenagers fooling around on Lover's Leap, and there's a lot of fun there. But there's also the experience of the Ghoul Scouts. One of our actors, his two kids, are voicing them, and they did an amazing job at it. But it's every negative experience you remember from summer camp. I was a Boy Scout, so I had a lot to draw on there. But mattresses that smell like urine, staying in these janky cabins that had screens that had holes in them the size of dinner plates, so mosquitoes would just come in and get you every night. And then you had the campfires and the hikes and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it got me reminiscing a lot about those hiking days. And as awful as they were in the moment, they are great character building points, which I guess is the ultimate point. You find out a lot about yourself on those kind of experiences out in the wilderness. The camaraderie of just unplugging from everything and then hanging out around a campfire. And one of the most fun things that I really miss about Boy Scouts was every night everyone getting together around the campfire and doing skits, 7 Up and the candy store, and a lot of these really cheesy kind of sketches that had really, really obvious punchlines. But even sing-alongs and stuff. What do any of you guys have camping horror stories?
Yeah, did you guys go to camp when you were kids?
So when I saw this topic, I went digging through my memory for a campfire horror story, and recall what came to mind were not any of the horror stories we tell around the fire. What I thought you kind of meant was more horror stories of being in camp.
Okay, so did you come up with one of those? Because that sounds good too.
I mean,
yeah. There was one that came to mind, and I don't know. At the time, it was one of the most embarrassing things I'd ever been a part of. But so there's a little background for this. I grew up largely on a commune, sort of a little bit off the grid, in Baltimore County. And my mom ran a feminist gathering in the midst of this that was clothing optional. So me and my little brother had
this is a horror story.
Oh, it was awesome. Eventually I'm going to release a memoir that's going to be fucking batshit. You guys are going to trip out on it. But anyway, so our first summer sort of in civilization, it was the first summer before we started attending a education. We were homeschooled, isolated. We went to a summer camp, and it was pretty hippy dippy in nature, but still much more civilized than we were used to. And there was one day towards the end of our time at summer camp, we largely had a blast, and I, kind of stumbled my way through kind of making a couple of friends. But anyway, I I was walking around one day, and I heard that my brother had a potty accident. He had shit his pants in the way that only a 5 year, was he 5, maybe 6 years old? Oh, he's gonna hate me for telling this, and I'm totally having him listen. But he shit his pants in the way that only a 5 or 6 year old really can, where it's not just an issue with the pants, an issue with the wall, it's an issue with, you know, the base of the toilet.
It's explosive.
And yeah, it was explosive and a problem. And I was told by a counselor I needed to go find him because he had disappeared shortly afterwards. And down, and I'm racked with anxiety because, again, we are new to the world. We are new to people. Like, I don't know what the consequences of this sort of thing are going to be. And I'm hunting all over, and I enlisted like a kid who I was kind of friends with, but he, you know, understood the secrecy and the dire nature of what was happening. And then, anyway, so we finally found him in the middle of the campground where all the kids were hanging out and playing and have sort of a casual time on a swing set.
Mm-hmm.
And he was fine. I thought that the world was going to fall down, and he just didn't seem to, pardon the pun, give a shit. And
He already did.
yeah, he was, all the shit was
gave
gone.
it was a con.
Yeah. And I walked up to him and was like, hey, so your pants are still tied in a knot around the toilet seat. Are you okay? And he turned to me, yeah, I'm fine. Like, who gave you a fresh set of pants? Brother, who grew up on a hippie commune, said, what pants? And the t-shirt he was wearing blew over his head in that exact moment. And he just could not possibly have cared less that this was like, yep, nope, pooped all over the place, and now I'm in a t-shirt. That's the way it's going to be.
He was just Donald ducking around at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. And anyway, so that was sort of a quasi horror story from camp.
Oh man, that's great. That's great.
My camping horror story particularly was if you're wanting West Virginia background in camping.
Oh yeah.
They had a very there's a 4-H camp in Hinton, West Virginia. And if you're familiar, there's like a damming system, and so you have the Summersville Dam, or as we like to call it, the Gad Dam. And you've got the Bluestone Dam. Later on, you go upriver on the New River, you get the Claytor Lake Dam. But Bluestone Dam is right near Hinton, West Virginia, so there's a lot of river. But this camp that we're at is right on the river. So there's like literally, it's like Fallout 76, and there are a ton of mosquitoes, and they eat you constantly while you were at this camp. So we would go there for band camp. And I'm talking like we would go there for band camp as in my grandfather, who was the band director for years and years and years at my high school, like back in in the 1950s, they were still going to the same camp and it hadn't been updated. So I was a senior at this time and had a leadership position, and there was this kid named Dexter, and Dexter was like, I don't know, he was an interesting kid, and was I guess a little bit nerdy, but he was incredibly obnoxious and would complain. And he played the clarinet, and he would constantly have to stop marching because his pinky would get sore. And so he would go to the nurse and get his pinky sore. But since he was a freshman, the kids the other freshman people would pick on him in the cabin. And so from the band director wasn't exactly hands-on. He gave a kind of a more leeway to the, I guess, leadership in the band, which in today's terms would be like everything that occurred at band camp there would be lawsuits. But they were picking on him and making fun of him. And one of them decided that it would be really funny to poop in a bag and set it on a log above his bed so that he could smell it but not like know where it is. And so for like a good day, he's walking around, what's that smell? Something stinks. And so he's going around talking about this stuff. And finally, because nothing is a secret in a small high school, I get word about it. And so I have a buddy of mine go in there and be like, just grab the bag of poop and just throw it out. Take him to the side, entertain him. I'm going to talk to the rest of the guys so nobody's feeling gets hurt. And so I get in there and I'm real mad. And these kids are like, I guess 14 and I was 17 at the time, and real little kids. I started and I looked mad and they were all scared because this is back in the thing when we would like make them do like 50 push-ups and squirt them with water guns and shoot tennis balls at their balls and such. The things that would get you a lawsuit now. And so I had them all in front of me. And everybody, and I mean, this is like at the end of the week, so we put them through, like, they were doing push-ups in the mud, they were getting flour thrown on them, like they were afraid of me. And I started off, and I was like, "Listen, boys, I'm tired of this shit." And then I caught myself for a moment, and I just started laughing, and they started laughing too. It's not the best pep talk, because obviously, tired of this shit would be tired of the poop in the bag. But that is my story.
I see what you did there. Yeah, you know what? Ken has to leave in a minute. Ken, you want to have any parting words before you go? The rest of us will stay around and we'll wrap up the show.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Can you let everyone know where to get a hold of you and your stuff so you don't miss out on that?
Yes. Fallout76podcast.com on Twitter, Facebook, and the website. And I'll talk to you guys next week. I'm sorry I have to run.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here.
I am also getting called away.
Well, we can go ahead and wrap it up. I've got some stories, but maybe we'll just hold on to these stories and some of the other ones I'm sure you guys have for next week. So why don't we go through the list and everyone can give their credentials, and then we'll do the little competition thing right at the end. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so Ian, where can they get a hold of you?
At Fictional Ian on Twitter. Or Under the Shroud, type it into your iTunes bar for podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. We're making, I think, both myself and everybody else is making a push right now, reconfiguring to try to grab as many stars and reviews as we can right now. So if you've been thinking about giving a review to anyone on Robots Radio, please go ahead and hit us up with one on iTunes, because there's a transition happening of sorts, and I think we could all get the word out there better.
Sure.
I've also seen a podcast recently that mentioned the stars as a good way not to promote me. Like, I don't really matter in this situation. If you enjoyed the show and you want other people to enjoy the show, help them out, give them a hand, and give us some stars so that everybody else can find us. So find all our podcasts there, I'm sure, and find me at Fictional Ian on Twitter.
Yeah, and if you look up one of the shows that you really do like and you look at the other related shows, a lot of people are listening to shows across the network. So it's really easy to find other shows you might like. It's also easy to find ones that you want to rate. And so you can click on one show and then go to the next show, leave a rating. That would be huge. If any of you guys would want to just take the time to do that, that helps all of us out. Boris, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me on my Twitter account at OMG Cornholio. We also do have a new podcast Twitter, because unfortunately the old one got suspended by Twitter for unknown reasons. So you can now find our Twitter at Destiny Show POD. You can follow us there. And you can find us online on our website at destinyshow.com and all the major podcasting platforms as well.
Cool. And Dave, the new guy? How are people going to get a hold of you?
Yeah.
The new guy?
You can find us at _CryptidCast. And that's on Twitter and Instagram. I'm still working on the Facebook. Facebook is incredibly weird for changing your names. And they're like, you're going to betray your followers if you do that. And I'm like, I don't care.
Screw those guys.
Yeah, you can find us there. We've got the website up and running. Some of the links don't work yet, but you can find that on Twitter, Instagram. That's updated. If you just want to follow me because you just love hearing my sweet, sweet voice and thoughts, I'm at CryptidCastDave on Twitter.
Cool. And I'm going to do my little wrap up, but then we have to review our little competition from last week, because I don't know if you guys saw who won. And then we've got our new one, just kind of wrap up the show. So yeah, I'm the host of the Robots Radio Network. My name's Tom. You can also call me Robots. And I'm the host of the shows like the Fallout Lorecast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, and now the Cyberpunk Lorecast, because that game's going to be awesome. So go to robotsradio.net to check up any of that stuff. And Ian reminded me of this earlier. A lot of the shows on the network have our own Patreons, and we are eternally thankful for anybody who takes the time to chip in even $1 a month on any of the different Patreons. You can find links to all the Patreons that I'm aware of. So if any of the hosts have one that I don't know of, let me know. I'll add it to the website, robotsradio.net, or just go to their own individual websites. You'll find things there, or show notes and that kind of stuff. But thank you to everybody who has been supporting these shows, because as you've heard, a lot of us put a lot of time and a lot of care into this stuff. And if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing it. So that really means a lot. So
but as much as the support financially helps, I really have to, some of the comments that I've gotten through the Robots Radio Discord, which I don't understand how you set those up, but I'm so grateful to Tom for doing so. Some of the conversations that I've had with fans on the Discord about the nature of the show have been enormously rewarding. I am really actually struggling not to cry about it right now.
Our fans are the best. They are.
They really are.
I had no idea. Like, my goal 6 months ago was to put together a community where people could come together and talk, but I had no idea that people were going to be this awesome. Like, everybody is smart and interesting. And yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You go on. Yeah, I just want to praise over them too.
You gave myself together, which I kind of needed there. I just wanted to really thank you guys. Some of the things you guys have said have been so insightful and just really make what we do worthwhile. I've been sending my mom screenshots of our conversations for the last week, and we talk about it and cry on the phone because we're big old hippies. But yeah, I just really wanted to say thank you to you guys. The contributions mean the world. They make the shows happen. They pay my sound guy, but the interactions mean more than anything else. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the show notes, there's links to the Discord if you aren't on there yet and you want to get involved. So let's wrap this up. So while I go over this, you guys think about a character or something you talked about in a most recent episode of the show, whether one that just came out or one that's about to come out. So get that in mind. Think of a character, and I'm going to drop you an honorific, and each of you is going to argue as to why your character is most likely to do the thing that I explained. Last week's was who is most likely to murder someone for pizza, and it was between the doctor from Under the Shroud, who I did listen to that episode, and I think you're right. I think that guy would murder for pizza, and Vivek from the Elder Scrolls Online, and that was Aramithius' offer. And this was very close. It came out 56% for the doctor. So congratulations, Ian. You are the winner. You're the winner from last week. Good argument. And please, if you are on Twitter voting on these on the Robots Radio, robots_radio on Twitter, make sure that you do listen to the arguments first, because they might sway your vote. Don't just go with the thing you like most. Listen to the argument and let that sway your vote. So this week, the question is, who is most likely to be abducted by aliens?
That's not fair. Because a couple of my... I'm just saying that's not fair, because a couple of my characters have been abducted by aliens.
Well, hey, and it may tie into cryptids also, and it might tie into Destiny. Like Boris talks about Destiny on his show all the time, and the kinds of things that happen in crazy Destiny stories. So this might apply across the board. So whoever's ready to go first,
fair
let me know.
enough. I'll jump in on this one. I'm going to choose a character who has not been abducted by aliens, because, again, not fair. Also, I don't want to give anything away. Actually, as a matter of fact, even mentioning the aliens is probably going to give a couple of you hints as to what are coming down the line, but you don't know how. So I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with the character of Corin, the main character of the show, who is a drug addict cab driver and half a demon, and has an almost supernatural knack for getting himself into trouble because of his ability to notice things and to know useful source of information, but not notice when somebody's watching him. And the reason I think he'd make a wonderful alien abductee is frankly because he represents a particularly strong link to the underworld, and any any Martian worth his salt that wanted to learn about Earth and is aware that there are dead people walking around is going to want a direct link to where the undead might come from. If you're planning on invading Earth, the last thing you want to deal with are zombies. And Corin is a perfect source of information as to how exactly that would go down.
They could even hire him to just, for the cab ride to the underworld.
This is, the technical term for that is a psychopomp. And the current working psychopomp is actually Anne Bond. I had another thing about that shit.
I'm sorry.
Nah, it's gone.
I got in the way. If it comes back later, chime in if it comes back later.
You got it.
All right, Boris, Dave.
Okay, so I have the perfect one. So Eris Morn is one of the bigger characters in Destiny, and she's going to be returning this fall in October with Shadowkeep as the main character in the game. And she was actually abducted by the Hive, in that they're kind of like aliens, I guess. They're
pretty alien-y. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
They're bad guys. They're pretty much, they were taken by the darkness, and we still don't know what the darkness is. Hopefully we'll find out in the next expansion.
I thought the darkness believed in a thing called love.
No, I don't think in this case. The love of killing and slaughtering.
I believe in a thing called love. I can't sing that high. Sorry, go on.
So I think Eris Morn would be the perfect candidate for this one, because she was abducted and she was the last known survivor of the what is it? It's called the Great Disaster. It was one of the major battles in the Destiny franchise that took place during the Taken King with Ariana 3. So so it's one of the bigger characters in the game. She'll be coming back this fall, and
cool.
I think she was abducted.
Cool. What was her name again?
Eris Morn.
How do you know how to spell that? A-R-I-S?
E-R-I-S-M-O-R-N.
E-R-I-S. M-O-R-N. Okay, I'm writing this down to make sure that I spell things right when we actually post the thing. All right, Dave, what do you got?
All right, so the character that I think would, and this is the character I had in my brain, so I didn't cheat, is Will Byers.
Oh, yeah.
From Stranger Things. So here's the setup. Here's the setup.
Awesome.
Now you're thinking about something. Here's the real setup. So it would be kind of like a Seinfeld episode, because these people would they would abduct Will, these aliens from another planet, and they would probably probe his brain. They'd be like, man, Earth sucks. You get hunted, you get abducted, you get mind controlled, you get bitten, and you get a slug in your throat, and you have a terrible haircut.
I don't know. I think those haircuts are pretty awesome.
The bowl cut, I don't know about that.
Yeah, Will's haircut's not necessarily the best, but some of the haircuts in the most recent season are just on point. Good. They're so like fierce, like huge.
Decadent.
All right, Will Byers. All right, so we got Corin Black versus Aaron Morin versus Will Byers. What was that, Ian?
The Corin Black thing, which is just that as a drug addict, he's also very used to probing for the right price.
He'd be a very cooperative abductee.
Oh, yeah.
He'd be like, yeah, all right. Yeah, give me some of that. I'll try it.
Yeah.
I'll try that out. I've seen worse. All right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out as usual. And Dave, thank you for joining us for your first episode. And normally this would be when we go over how to get a hold of everybody. We already did that. Kind of did things in a weird order this week, but that's cool. We just kind of roll with it. And until next week, everybody, I hope you're enjoying our shows, and we'd love to hear from you. So write us stuff and come chat with us on Discord. And we will see you next week. Talk to you guys later.
Later, guys. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
And cut. Hey, chat. Now we can actually talk directly to chat on Twitch. Hey, guys. Well, thanks. That was a lot of fun, everybody.
Hey. That was a good one.
Guys.
Yay. Hello, chat. Well, thanks for everybody for hanging out. This is the post show. And yeah, we'll do this again next week, I guess. And I might be trying to stream more games on the internets as I get more free time. So it might be on later today if anybody wants to come back and hang out.
I wanted to make a quick sort of in-crew announcement. I'm about to start developing a new interview podcast.
Ooh.
And I wanted to give everybody here first shot at it. I'm going to call it Bad. I didn't want to do an official announcement because I don't know what the timeline's going to be like or how many episodes I want to get backlogged. But the working title is Bad Adventures, and it's just going to be organized as a co-promotion platform. So folks who have their own work either online or wherever to promote come on, and they tell a bad went poorly. And they'll tell their story and I'll interview them about it. I'm thinking we'll try to keep it relatively brief, and then we'll finish up with them promoting whatever they're working on. So obviously it's perfect for all of us. And yeah, I'm thinking the way I'll probably set it up is, and I'll put this out through the Discord later, but have people send me like a elevator pitch of what their bad adventure is, and then we'll record it.
Cool. That sounds fun. Okay, yeah. Keep us up to date with that. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna head out, and I'm sure I'll chat with you guys online.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
We'll talk later, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, viewers. Thanks for hanging out.
Guys.
We'll see you later.
Yeah. Great being here. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.